Welcome to the winning bit, automating the RFP process. Hello and welcome to this second episode of the podcast by Sequesto. This one is called Growth Unlocking, Catalyzing Human-Centric Success from Vision to Victory. Now that is a mouthful and it entails two things. Vision to victory. Obviously, every company needs to grow and needs to scale. So we'll talk about that. And as guests, I have Evrach, I have Patrick, both founders of Sequesto, and also Jochen Buykens, who is an investor in Sequesto. Jochen, I understand that your background is more financial and data analytics. Can you say something about yourself?
Thanks. First of all, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here with the two co-founders and yourself. My background is indeed financial. At least I had a financial education. And afterwards, I started my career in a venture capital fund. But then after a few years, I noticed that it's pretty hard to help the people that you invest in if you've not been in their shoes. So then I decided to move to the other side, as they say, and join the company in Ghent, a B2B SaaS company, which then also attracted venture capital funding and then grew quickly, and then ultimately was acquired and then became an angel investor. And
you've become a serial entrepreneur, actually, almost.
That's sort of process I've done 3 times with different companies where I joined the company at a little bit later stage, but then was able also to invest in the company a bit. So I call myself a little bit of a late co-founder, and which is also the slogan of our fund now, which we've established a couple of years back. It's to be rather a late co-founder than an early investor.
That's a very beautiful term. Yeah. I must say that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Now, growth, as we said, is essential to any company, and you need to ensure that growth keeps coming. But the second component in this title is human-centric, because it's actually very pivotal to the success and the sustainable growth of a company. And this is actually the topic that we want to address. Now, there are 2 parts in the human-centric side of the story. There's the human-centric side of your company internals, because if you grow a company, your own headcount will start to grow. And this is facing challenges, always has, but even more today. But on the other hand, and this is probably more interesting to the customers or the interested people who are listening to this podcast, what about our side of the story? How can we make our lives better with your solution? Now, in last episode, we talked briefly about this. We basically said that we take away stress, we take away pains from the process. So on the one hand, let's elaborate a bit more on that. But on the other hand, let's also elaborate a bit more on how we can grow a company by making the human-centric side nicer and better. All right. Now, to kick off this conversation, one of the challenges nowadays is recruiting people. And this is true for Sequesto, but this is also true for all other companies that might be using Sequesto. Now, as we said before, people now are retiring. There's the demography in Europe and in most of the world, which means that a lot of people are retiring, taking away knowledge of bidding, tendering, the processes of a company, a lot of things. And new people come in at a lower rate. So they are facing a challenge that they have to do more work with not necessarily the long-term experience, and yet they have to deliver high quality, stringent deadlines, and a lot of stress. This is something you want to take out of the equation. So, Jochen, from what you understand, you've been investing in Sequesto. To what extent is this important, and is Sequesto addressing this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. There's a big contrast between capacity that's reducing while the work is increasing. And also, on the other hand, the people that are joining the workforce, they have been accustomed to very high levels of customer experience. I mean, everybody's used to ordering a pizza, being able to follow it from door to door. So the experience that you have in your life, should extend also to your workplace. And so the tools that you have, the environment that you're in, everything related to actually where you spend the most of your time is expected to be at that level as well. And so many young people who are joining the workforce expect this to be there. And so at Taurus, the fund that invested in Sequesto, one of our pillars, and it's stated pretty boldly, it's going from salary slaves to passion workers. So we want to enable people to take away the pains out of their jobs, out of their lives, their work lives. And a lot of this has to do with finding tools that enable them to do more in a better way, in a more fun way. And this is exactly what Sequesto is building for tender managers.
I believe that something comes up now in my mind, and I would actually suggest to use a new term, like you have user experience. You would have the term of employer experience, and you actually want to improve the employee experience. And you're totally right. Mm-hmm. I think the technology nowadays enables us to do this more than in the past, where a very loose, old school tool set was creating more havoc, was creating more stress. And we take this now out of the equation. And this is absolutely true. I believe also there is an element of training that you can take away, because indeed you are automating parts of the processes that would require a lot more knowledge in the past. You still need skilled people, but you can shorten the interval that they require schooling and require training. So you can elaborate a bit on that, Patrick.
Yeah. I'll gladly do that, but before we go there, I want to build on to what Jochen just said. When we started Sequesto, one of the first things that we did is we interviewed over 250 people across Europe from roughly 200 companies. One of the main questions was, what does your process of answering tenders, what does it look like? Can you explain what you do? They were irrelevant of which country, irrelevant of how big their team was, whether they were speaking French, English, or German. They all painted me a picture of a fairly similar process with a large number of elements that were extremely time-consuming, extremely repetitive, and extremely numbing. The main conclusion was we spent the bigger part of the time to handle a tender, an RFI, an RFP, or even a questionnaire is being wasted on those repetitive, numbing, and time-consuming elements. So there is only a small portion of the time that is left to work on quality and to work on what will it actually take us to convince this customer that we're the right party. So from day one, we focused tremendously on how can we eliminate many of those repetitive and time-consuming tasks. Not to simply say, so you can answer twice the number of tenders with the same team, but much more on if we can win back 50% of the time. And half of that you would reinvest in quality and in really trying to understand what is it that we need to do to win this project. That would have a massive impact on your win rate. So that's a big plus. But it also has a massive impact on the human being, on the people that are involved in the process. Because let's be honest, nobody likes to spend days searching a library for relevant information. Nobody likes to look for detail, and then once we have eventually found it, to then copy it from one Excel sheet and then paste it in another Excel sheet. That's like, to be honest, that's not like the most rewarding or most challenging or most stimulating work. So take out as much as you can from that perspective, so that people can focus on the relevant stuff, on the stuff where they can make a difference and where they can create impact.
Now, Evrar, you have been doing onboardings of Sequesto with customers. Can you witness this? Can you confirm that this actually is what is happening? Do you notice any reductions of stress levels at the customers?
Yeah, for sure. It depends what type of users, but for example, if you have the tender manager, then they really like to see the dashboarding that we have implemented or the overview per project, where they can track the progress and so on. And so directly the first reactions are, I can finally have a nice view on what's going on in my team, and I can quickly send back reminders, assign the work to different individuals. And then when it comes to the team members, they are really, really happy and relieved to not have to look for relevant content in the library anymore. So whenever they answer the questions, having just on the side of the screen the 5 most relevant questions, similar questions to the one that they need to answer, it's a big relief for them. It's a really gain of time, and I think that they just feel better about their job, and yeah.
Now, a question for Jochen. Sequesto, you can consider Sequesto as a SaaS company. And nowadays, people like to work from home, or at least partly work from home. To what extent do you think that a solution like Sequesto is facilitating this process? In the old school way of working, I think bid managers and bid teams and whatever the term was, tended to be locked up in a room for days, weeks, months even. Do you think that Sequesto enables a change here? And to what extent will it facilitate recruitment where people might be living further from the office than in the past?
Yeah, a lot, of course, and this is for sure the promise of SaaS in general, that it's accessible everywhere, and this is also the case for Sequesto, and the promise of AI is, of course, that you can you turn one person into 5 people, that you can give superpowers to somebody, so you add flexibility and you add superpowers to people, so you're creating an environment where you have a hybrid or some kind of collaboration between a human and an AI agent, if you will, that improves the lives of the people tremendously. So yes, it accelerates that evolution of being more flexible, of working when you want, where you want, and also to be able to do a lot more than you used to do.
And also, obviously, working hours, because of the very nice overview that you have, people can work different time slots. A working mother could work late in the evening when the baby's asleep, for example, and still be very fully embedded in the full team.
Absolutely.
So this is actually a game changer in comparison.
Yeah, it's something that I believe in every company, where you can add flexibility to do the work that you have to do by yourself, where you want, when you want, and then there's focused sync time, which is still, I prefer to do in real life between people. So that is the promise that Sequesto also delivers for bid managers.
Yeah. Reducing travel time, commute time, which usually is a contributor to stress. People generally don't like to spend a lot of time in traffic or in full trains. On the other hand, people do like to be in an office occasionally with colleagues. They like social life. However, this is something you can balance probably better than before. So this is a very important component in any tech company. And what it seems is that you basically bring better tech to enable this to your customers who had a very old fashioned approach.
Yeah, the sheer fact that you can tap into the collective memory. Remember, instead of just a library where we all go search for what we need, we just tap through the platform. We tap into our collective memory, so that whatever memory any of us has is available to all of us when we're working through these very complex processes.
Now, Patrick, in the previous podcast episode, you mentioned two types of people: the early adopters and the people who are probably more skeptical, who are more fearful of their jobs. AI will replace them, and so on and so on. Now, the early adopters don't need to be convincing because they are already. How do you make sure that the other group is also happily joining the rest of the team and is not creating any disconcertation?
Well, what we focus on a lot when we're thinking about new capabilities that we want to put into the platform, we're always looking at multiple aspects. First of all, what will be the business impact? So what will be the result of what we're putting in for the business? But we also focus very heavily on what will be the human impact. Human impact for all the users that are basically involved in that process. So for the more skeptical audience, I would say it is absolutely crucial that we at all times demonstrate and prove that whatever we're putting in the platform is an enhancement to their capabilities. But they at all times remain in the driver's seat, they remain in control, and they at all times make the final decisions. So with our platform, when you're looking at a specific question that you need to answer, remember, our librarian, the platform basically says, here are 4 valid answer candidates to very similar questions. But it is up to you as the specialist to still make that final decision. So it's not a matter of we're going to automatically answer all the questions, taking away your job. No, this is what we're going to make sure that we provide at your fingertips when you need it, the relevant information, so you can make the smartest choice with the least effort.
I think one thing not to forget is also the fact that we reduce error proneness of your answers. I myself have been involved in tender processes in the past, and given the time pressure, sometimes you're in a rush and you're not entirely sure. You know, there's one person who knows the answer, but he's unreachable. Yep. He's on his holiday on the other side of the world. And you are looking into some documents and you make something up. But the consequences can be very dear.
Yep.
You may lose the winning bid. And that has, of course, major consequences.
Yep.
So, Jochen, given this fact, the fact that we improve accuracy, how do you think this will impact the morale of the teams?
Yeah, and this relates to your previous question as well, where there's definitely people that have doubts, and I think most of the fears that we encounter, myself as well, in other software companies, is mostly related to the change that you're bringing to the company, right? The long-term benefits, like reducing errors, like winning more bids, like having more time, everybody is all for that. But what does the process look like getting there? And so it's the task of every software company to make that transition as easy as possible. Mm-hmm. And I think the guys at Sequesto have done a great job at that. It's something that you can almost try before you buy, and there's great onboarding support. I think that's the job of any SaaS company, to minimize that pain as well. Mm-hmm. And so the long-term benefits then make it absolutely worthwhile. Of course, reducing errors is also makes you successful as an individual contributor to a certain project or as a manager. So that's one of the superpowers that you gain after you've gone through a little bit of change in your team.
One practical question for Evrag, actually. And obviously, you have multilingual support. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes tenders tend to be in another language than the native language of the people answering them. And it might have been a challenge sometimes in the past. Not everybody masters the language as good as he or she would want to. So to what extent do you think Sequesto makes this process easier and more accessible?
So as you just said, we are multilingual. So that means we have AI models that understand those different languages. They are able to connect content or pieces of text or questions from different languages together. And next to that, we also have translation capabilities. So with those two things, I think we can help all the teams from all over the world to answer the different tenders, RFP, RFIs, all the documents they have from whatever language they receive.
Right. Because sometimes, obviously, in some countries, the situation is very monolingual, in the UK, for example. But in other countries, it is quite custom to have a tender in one language, sometimes in English, and yet staff won't be native English speakers or whatever. And I think this is going to be also pivotal.
But that's where we make a big difference. Imagine you've got a tender manager looking at a question in a tender in Spanish in Madrid. A colleague of him in the Netherlands could have answered a very similar question and could have created a fabulous answer in Dutch, sitting in Amsterdam. In the real life, at most customers, you don't stand the chance of basically transferring that information or that knowledge. With our platform says, wait a minute, you're looking at this Spanish question, but one of our colleagues answered in Dutch a very similar question. The algorithms calculate how similar is this one to the question that you're confronted with. The algorithm will tell you this one is 99% similar, but I don't understand it. I don't speak Dutch because I'm a Spanish guy. Then we've got the translation capability built in that will, with one click, basically put that question and answer from my Dutch colleague in Spanish. So I'll know it, I'll read it, and I'll say like, yeah, this is 99% the answer I want to give. You just drag and drop it in, and you then do the fine-tuning. The fine-tuning is where you add the value. It's where you make it specific for your customer. Instead of wasting your time looking for information in a library, which is completely useless.
Right. Yeah. You have more time to spend on the personalization, which is ultimately what makes you win the tender.
That's what makes the impact.
Jochen, I believe you want to say something.
Well, I thought it was a fantastic example as well of how our shared belief in building human-centric software, right? Because you're connecting people who speak different languages. You're not relying on just one size fits all. And so that's something that we both share. So I'm very happy that that's part of the solution, and that's how people should work in an international setting, of course.
Yeah. True. Especially in larger organizations, people are now hiring people from multiple countries. Sometimes they even stay in their country, work remotely. This is actually more the rule than the exception. And this is now finally possible and this was true in development jobs, software development, but more and more this is true in all processes of a company, all roles, marketing, sales, HR, and obviously bid management, which is part of the sales organization, but very often touching also operations, right?
Absolutely.
And this is another key thing, the collaborative aspect, which we briefly touched in the previous episode, is also crucial because in the bidding process, people are sometimes asking information about existing operations. This is true in cases of renewals. There's bids that are to be renewed, and they want to know firsthand how are things going, where can we improve, where has this been some unhappiness by the existing customer, and then the bid team needs to speak with people in everyday operations. To what extent do you think this is important, Jochen?
It's a big frustration. So I've in the previous company that I was in, which was also started, as a software company and had to sell to much bigger companies. So we partake in a lot of these RFPs. So they would very often end up on my desk, and then it was up to me to coordinate the work. And so you're trying to follow up everybody by email, but then they are waiting for somebody else, and you quickly lose sight of where the process is. And it's held up because of some minor detail that somebody in the team can solve, but they're just not aware of it. So creating awareness by making that entire process transparent, accelerates the process a lot. So that's crucial, that you can work collaboratively on producing answers to these tenders.
And the platform also allows you to basically build up knowledge and share knowledge in a much more efficient way. Imagine you've got a more junior tender manager joining the team. What I hear from the market, from all the people that we've spoken to, it could take easily up to 18 to 24 months before a junior individual is up to an acceptable level of performance in the bid team.
Correct. Yes.
That is a major challenge. If we can cut that in half, that is like a massive gain for a company. The same applies to if one of your most senior people leaves the organization today in your tender team, the knowledge drain that you've got there, because this lady has been here, she's been doing this job for 12 years in the same company, she has seen it all, she's done it all, she knows where everything is, she can answer basically every question. All of a sudden, she's no longer there. Your library is still there, the information is still there, or the data is still there, but you don't have a clue where it is, how it's structured, where to find it, so you're completely lost.
It might be even unstructured to an extent that the structure was basically in her head. This brings me to another topic, that is that many companies actually use wrong tool sets. They organically grow, and they tend to be very diverse. They have a bunch of documents, either Google Drive or traditional Word documents, or others, PowerPoints, scattered over multiple drives, shared, not shared, and so on. You see people using all kinds of spreadsheets, obviously, and they seem to be using more and more SaaS tools, multiple, there's loads of them. And in the end, it seems like no company has a single solution, but that means also that while everything is shareable in theory, it isn't in practice, because people can't find their way around it. So it is crucial to have a single approach in terms of content management. And this is, I believe, what you bring. Correct?
Yeah, it's. I think one of the challenges is exactly that. You have to have the courage as a company to say, well, we've been doing the work this way for a very long time, but we can gain a massive improvement if we do it completely differently by using the right tools. And then let's make that transition. And then reviewing all of your process and finding out that, well, the tools that we've been using are good, but there's actually a much more comprehensive way of doing things. So that requires a bit of courage to look at that and then get the team around that problem.
I think it's also a cause of security concern, because people who are worried about security often forget that the existing way, the as-is situation, is worse, because all these documents are not protected. They are not under a same standard of authentication. They might be, some documents may be, others may not be. Some are simple password protected and others are not protected at all. Some are encrypted. So I believe that this approach is obviously better because you can apply high standards, compliance, security-wise to this, right? Which also takes away strain and stress, especially, of course, when things go wrong. As you said, it's not always hacking. It's sometimes also people leaving a company, taking away access, taking away information, and so on.
I think on just to go a little bit further on your previous topic of security, it's much better to give a software access to your library of information. That's one very structured way that you can protect, instead of giving hundreds of people access, and then giving people access to that software tool so they can direct the searches and the queries that need to be done on the entire library. That's I think a very efficient way of making things more secure. So that's I think that's an excellent way of doing it.
And one more question to you, Jochen, as somebody with a financial background. What would for you be an element that triggers your interest in a solution like Sequesto? If you would be running an existing company, doing a lot of bidding, what would be the pivotal thing, if there's any one element, that makes you consider a solution like Sequesto's?
Well, to me, the benefits are quite clear. I think you can also make them very tangible. You can calculate the return on investment. So I'm not too worried about that. I think adoption is one of the key elements. If you top down say, well, this is a program that will improve all of our processes and make us win more bids and reduce errors, etc., then everybody has to accept, of course, that new solution. So adoption is very important. And that's where I think, again, a human-centric value that is present in Sequesto comes in. The onboarding process and the support processes that are present there help people to make that transition and get everybody in the company on board with moving to receiving those superpowers. Mm-hmm. So that's I think that would be my main concern. It's not a financial concern because those benefits are pretty clear to me.
Clear. Yes.
But if you invest in a software and you have to worry about, will this be accepted by my team? That might jeopardize that entire process.
Well, it seems clear. Basically, what we do is we turn these teams into superheroes to some extent. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe that sounds a bit exaggerated, but that's what it boils down to.
Yes.
Yep. We at least equip them with superpowers. Let's put it like that.
Superpowers, exactly. All right. Well, I believe we've discussed all the relevant aspects of this. So let's summarize. Sequesto gives people superpowers, then they can use them, reduces stress levels. There is a high level of return of investment. So it makes also the management of companies happy, increases success rates, reduces error rates, and generally improves the employer experience of everybody involved. So this, I believe, is a very, very valuable solution.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the topic of today, which was human-centric software, is I think something that is really ingrained into the values of the company, and so also in the software that Sequesto builds.
Mm-hmm. One analogy that is sometimes used is that people nowadays are used to very high quality software. You take your smartphone, your laptop, even your smart TV. The interfaces nowadays are marvelous.
Yep.
And a lot of corporate software still has interfaces that were built 20, 30 years ago with totally different standards, non-standards, I would say, usability. So this is another very obvious advantage.
Yeah. So what we're aiming for with our solution is the RFP, RFI questionnaire challenge is massive. Documentation is complex. The whole process is very complex. With our platform, we aim to shield all that complexity for the user and try to offer to each and everyone involved in that process a very calming, soothing way of working. Now, what we do under the hood is extremely complex, but we shield it completely from the user. So that creates calmness at the user. It reduces the stress. We take care of the repetitive, boring, numbing stuff, so you can get your rewards out of creating impact as a human being. And we strongly believe that is what it's all about.
Sequesto, the Zen of RFP automation.
That would be a very nice tagline to start using indeed.
I'll apply for the marketing role.
Yeah, what gives me a lot of trust as well is that it's just built by people who used to fill in a lot of tenders and that really have experienced that pain. So, so having a team building a solution for that is almost guarantees that you're getting something good.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for this very interesting conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on The Winning Bid, Mastering the RFP Process.